There are 7 places in a man's life that silently destroy his power, and the first one is where most men spend their entire existence without realizing it. It is the place where nothing is demanded of you, where no one expects more from you than the version of yourself you were 5 years ago. It is the most comfortable prison a man can live in, the environment that never challenges him, never pressures him, never forces him to sharpen his instincts or expand his capacities. Most men mistake this place for peace, for stability, for safety. They don't understand that the absence of pressure is the beginning of decay. A man does not lose his power in dramatic battles or grand failures. He loses it in quiet rooms where nobody cares whether he rises or falls. He loses it when the world around him stops asking him to be more. Because without demand, a man's strength withers. Without resistance, a man's mind goes soft. And without challenge, his ambition turns to dust. You can see this silent destruction everywhere. In the friend group that treats growth as an insult. In the circle that mocks learning, belittles discipline, and treats success as a betrayal of the tribe. These are the men who laugh at your drive because it reminds them of their own surrender. They are at peace with mediocrity, and they want you to join them. They don't want to see you climb. They want to see you stay exactly where you are, so they never have to confront what they could have become. And if you stay beside them long enough, you don't notice the shift happening within you. Your hunger dims, your edge dulls. You begin to ask yourself smaller questions. You start to feel guilty for wanting more. That is how power dies, quietly, socially, almost politely. Not through conflict, but through conformity. The same poison exists in workplaces where the reward is not excellence, but obedience. Where ambition is labeled as arrogance. Where initiative is punished because it disrupts the comfortable laziness of the herd. In environments like these, a man slowly begins to negotiate against himself. He hides his ideas to avoid being resented. He shrinks his presence to avoid being targeted. He convinces himself that the paycheck is worth more than the part of himself he has to kill to earn it. And day after day, he trades a piece of his potential for a little more security, a little more approval, a little more of the warmth that comes from fitting in. But there is nothing more dangerous to a man of potential than the approval of the mediocre. Their validation is a curse disguised as belonging. Even the home can become this silent graveyard of power. A place where expectations are so low that ambition feels out of place. Where your dreams make others uncomfortable. Where discipline is treated like obsession, and self-respect is misinterpreted as ego. And if a man is not careful, he will adapt to this environment just as surely as a caged lion adapts to the zoo. He forgets what he is capable of. He forgets the instincts that once defined him. He becomes tame because the environment never demanded the wildness he was born with. He becomes gentle, where he should be sharp, passive, where he should be decisive, apologetic, where he should be formidable. There is nothing noble about staying in a place that celebrates your smallest self. A man becomes what his environment requires to survive. Place him in a circle of warriors, and he will harden. Place him among thinkers, and he will expand. Place him among cowards, and he will lower his standards to avoid standing alone. Human nature is not as independent as we pretend it is. We adapt, we mirror, we absorb, and if you spend long enough in a place that expects nothing, demands nothing, and challenges nothing in you, then you will slowly become nothing, not because you are weak, but because the environment you chose never awakened your strength. It sedated it, it lulled it to sleep. It convinced you that potential is something you can revisit it someday, until someday quietly turns into never. What destroys men is not hardship. Hardship forges them. What destroys men is living in environments where they are never tested. When a man walks through life unchallenged, he walks through life unawakened. He never discovers the deeper layers of his mind, the sharper edges of his will, the strategic instincts he is capable of developing. Pressure builds kings. Comfort builds ghosts. The first dangerous place is the one that flatters you into staying the same. The place that disguises stagnation as stability. The place that gives you no reason to evolve. And the tragedy is that most men never leave it. They settle. They adjust. They accept the emotional anesthesia of low expectations. They tell themselves that this is enough, that this is fine, that this is what life is supposed to feel like. And by the time they realize what this environment has stolen from them, they no longer remember what powerful even felt like. But there is another place, a far more insidious, intoxicating, and addictive trap. A place where men lose not only their ambition but their attention, their discipline, and their ability to rule themselves. A place filled with noise, distraction, and seductive pleasures designed to keep a man numb while his crown slips silently from his head. And that is where we go next. There is a second place where a man's power dissolves long before he notices anything is wrong. A place far more seductive than the first, because it doesn't feel like destruction. It feels like stimulation. It feels like escape. It feels like pleasure. This place does not surround you with low expectations. It surrounds you with noise. Endless, manufactured, addictive noise. The kind that fills your mind, clutters your instincts, and drowns your inner voice. Most men don't understand this. Power is built in silence and lost in distraction. A man cannot hear his ambition when the world is screaming for his attention, and so he gives his focus away piece by piece, hour by hour, until he forgets that every empire he could have built slowly died inside the minutes he wasted. The tragedy is that this place rewards a man with momentary satisfaction, while quietly stealing the future he was meant to claim. You see this destruction everywhere. In the endless scroll that numbs the mind. In the artificial pleasure loops that replace real struggle with digital stimulation. In the constant dopamine drip that keeps a man entertained but empty, busy but unaccomplished, stimulated but powerless. A man tells himself he is resting, relaxing, taking a break. But distractions do not restore a man. They weaken him. They erode the discipline that once made him dangerous. They smother the hunger that once pushed him forward. When a man spends hours drowning in entertainment, he does not escape life. He escapes himself. He escapes the pressure to grow. He escapes the confrontation with his own potential. And the more he escapes, the smaller he becomes. This place of noise offers the illusion of connection while delivering isolation. Men gather in comment sections, in group chats, in shallow digital tribes that mimic real social belonging, but require no courage, no accountability, no strength. It is companionship without responsibility, validation without achievement. A man begins to mistake being seen for being significant. He mistakes attention for respect. He mistakes reaction for relevance. This environment breeds fragility, not power. It creates men who crumble when the applause stops. Men who cannot sit with their own thoughts. Men who fear silence because silence exposes how little they have done with their time. And yet the most dangerous part is not the distraction itself. It is what distraction prevents. A distracted man cannot plan. He cannot strategize. He cannot look ahead, assess the terrain, and maneuver with intention. His mind becomes reactive instead of deliberate. He spends his days responding instead of creating. He becomes predictable, controllable, and easily manipulated because he has surrendered the sharpest weapon he has, focused attention. Machiavelli understood this deeply. A prince who cannot control his mind is already conquered, even if he still sits on the throne. And in the modern world, most men willingly hand over their mental sovereignty to the very machines designed to exploit their instincts. There is a reason kings, philosophers, and strategists withdrew into solitude before making decisions. Silence gives shape to thought. Silence reveals the truth a man hides from himself. Silence magnifies the voice of ambition. But noise, constant, glittering, intoxicating noise, buries that voice under layers of stimulation. In this place, a man loses his ability to think deeply, to examine his desires, to calculate the consequences of his actions. And when a man cannot think, he cannot rule. He becomes a servant to impulse, reacting to whatever stimulus is thrown at him. Distraction creates a life without authorship, a life where a man drifts instead of directs, consumes instead of creates, collapses inward instead of ascending upward. Worse still, this place destroys a man's patience. It trains him to crave immediacy, immediate pleasure, immediate validation, immediate reward. But all real power requires the opposite: long-term thinking, delayed gratification, disciplined sacrifice. A man addicted to instant stimulation cannot build anything that lasts. He cannot stay with a difficult task long enough to master it. He cannot endure boredom, which is the quiet doorway through which greatness enters. The men who rise in life are those who can sit with discomfort, who can tolerate silence, who can resist the need to escape every moment that isn't entertaining. But the place of noise conditions a man to be allergic to stillness. And a man who fears stillness will never meet the strongest version of himself. And here is the deepest tragedy. Men believe they are choosing distraction, when in reality, distraction is choosing them. It is engineered to capture their attention. It is designed to keep them passive, addicted, and compliant. Empires are no longer conquered by armies, they are conquered by algorithms. And the more time a man spends in this place, the more he weakens the only kingdom he truly controls, his inner world. But there is a third place, even darker than this one, a place where a man's own emotions become the chains that bind him, a place where the enemy is not the noise around him, but the turmoil within him, a place where even strong men collapse quietly under the weight of unmastered feelings. And that is where we go next. There is a third place where a man's power dissolves, and it is far more intimate than the places before it, because this one is inside him. It is the emotional landscape he never learned to command. A realm where feelings move like storms, unchecked and undirected, shaping his decisions, distorting his perception, and quietly ruling his life. This is the place where a man becomes a prisoner of his own reactions, not because he is weak, but because nobody ever taught him that emotions, when unmastered, are tyrants. Men think they fall because of circumstances, betrayals, failures, or enemies, but more often, they fall because they never learned to take power over the inner chaos that rises when life applies pressure. A man who cannot regulate his inner world is a man the outer world can easily break. This place is subtle. It doesn't announce itself loudly like distraction, nor does it reveal itself clearly like environments that demand nothing. Instead, it shows up in small moments, the sudden anger that makes a man speak words he cannot unsay, the wounded pride that makes him chase validation at the cost of his dignity, the hidden insecurity that makes him sabotage opportunities, the quiet resentment that poisons his relationships, the fear that makes him hesitate when he should act. Most men do not realize that their emotional patterns are not random. They are trained responses built over years of neglect. And when a man never confronts these patterns, they control him with ruthless efficiency. A man may discipline his body, sharpen his mind, and study the world, but if his emotions remain wild, he is vulnerable where it matters most. Every enemy, every manipulator, every calculating mind knows this truth. You do not defeat a man by overpowering him, you defeat him by provoking him. Push the right emotional button, and even a strong man will fold. Anger can make him reckless. Jealousy can make him irrational. Insecurity can make him obedient. Fear can make him silent. This place, the battlefield of unmastered emotion, is where many promising men destroy themselves long before the world ever touches them. They think they were unlucky. They think fate was cruel. But fate merely exploited the cracks they refused to seal. And this place becomes especially deadly when a man ties his identity to his emotions, when he believes that every feeling he has is meaningful, when he thinks his sadness is a sign to stop, his fear is a warning to retreat, his loneliness is a reason to return to the people who hurt him. Emotions are weather, powerful, shifting, unpredictable, but many men treat them like commandments. They let temporary feelings decide permanent outcomes. They let moods dictate their discipline. They let emotional discomfort dictate whether they pursue a goal, end a relationship, or step into opportunity. A king who obeys his own storms cannot lead a kingdom. He can barely lead himself. What makes this place so dangerous is its invisibility. A man can see when his environment is mediocre. He can see when his life is filled with noise, but he cannot easily see the emotional traps he carries within him. He cannot see the childhood wounds that still shape his reactions. He cannot see the fear of inadequacy that hides behind his arrogance. He cannot see the longing for approval that fuels his self-betrayal. He cannot see how much of his life is dictated not by strategy, but by unexamined emotion, and so he thinks he is thinking clearly when he is actually reacting. He thinks he is deciding when he is actually avoiding. He thinks he is in control when he is actually being controlled. A man who does not master his emotions eventually becomes predictable, and predictability is the death of power. Strategists exploit predictable men. Lovers manipulate predictable men. Employers overwork predictable men. Enemies provoke predictable men. The world knows exactly where to press, exactly how to twist, exactly how to steer him, because his emotions announce his weaknesses louder than words ever could. And once a man is predictable, he is not feared, not respected, not admired. He becomes usable. And the world has no shortage of ways to use a man who cannot use himself. But the true danger of this place is not how it affects others. It is how it shapes him from the inside. Unmastered emotion turns a man into an enemy to himself. He becomes the one who ruins his momentum. He becomes the one who breaks his own routines. He becomes the one who creates the very problems he later blames on fate. Emotional chaos makes a man unreliable to himself. He cannot trust his own decisions because he never knows which version of himself will show up. The focused one or the reactive one, the disciplined one or the impulsive one, the confident one or the insecure one. And a man who cannot trust himself cannot build anything that requires long-term strength. Yet even this inner battlefield is not the most destructive place a man can stand. There is a fourth place, colder and quieter, a place where a man's power doesn't explode outward or collapse inward, but erodes slowly over time. A place built not on noise or emotion, but on something far more suffocating, stagnation that disguises itself as responsibility, duty or stability. A place where men go when they no longer burn, and that is where we go next. There is a fourth place where a man's power doesn't collapse suddenly, but drains slowly, almost politely, over months and years. A place so subtle that most men mistake it for maturity, stability, or duty. It is the place where a man convinces himself that staying still is noble, that suppressing his desires is responsible, that abandoning his hunger is the price of adulthood. This is the place of quiet stagnation, where a man stops growing, stops risking, stops imagining, stops wanting, not because he is weak, but because life has offered him just enough comfort to keep him from moving, and just enough pressure to keep him afraid of change. This place doesn't break men, it embalms them while they're still alive. It begins with small compromises. The dream that once excited him is postponed. The ambition that once kept him awake at night becomes unrealistic. The fire that once burned in his chest begins to feel childish, even embarrassing. He tells himself he is being practical. He tells himself he is being responsible. He tells himself that this is what a man is supposed to do: endure, provide, repeat. And as he repeats, year after year, something inside him hardens. He doesn't collapse, he calcifies. His identity becomes built around routines he never questioned, responsibilities he never chose, and expectations he never challenged. This place is dangerous because it changes a man without his consent. He grows into someone he never consciously decided to be. The tragedy is that the world praises him for it. Society applauds a man who trades his aspirations for stability. People call him reliable, disciplined, grounded. They celebrate him for carrying burdens that quietly destroy him. And because he is praised for his sacrifice, he clings to it. He convinces himself that wanting more is selfish, that growth is reckless, that ambition is a threat to the fragile balance of the life he has built. He does not realize that duty without growth becomes bondage, and stability without evolution becomes a cage. A man can appear responsible while secretly decaying. He can fulfill every obligation and still abandon himself. In this place, a man becomes afraid of his own potential. He senses that if he moves, if he changes, if he grows, the life built around his smaller self might crumble. The relationship based on his compliance might falter. The job built around his silence might become unstable. The people who rely on his predictability might pull away. And so he stays still, not because he is content, but because moving would require confronting truths he has avoided for years. A man who fears the consequences of awakening is a man who has already surrendered his power. His life becomes a set of chains he forged for himself, each link made from a compromise he rationalized as the right thing. In this stagnant place, a man's mind begins to shrink. His imagination dulls. The world becomes smaller, narrower, more repetitive. He stops seeking new experiences, new knowledge, new perspectives. His beliefs become rigid because they are no longer tested. His personality becomes defensive because he no longer evolves. He clings to what he knows, not because it is good, but because it is familiar. And familiarity, when repeated long enough, becomes a coffin padded with comfort. This is the emotional architecture of stagnation. Soft on the outside, suffocating on the inside. A man doesn't drown in chaos here, he suffocates in predictability. What makes this place so dangerous is that a man can live his entire life inside it and never know what he missed. He will never know the strength he could have built. He will never know the brilliance he could have developed. He will never know the life he could have created if he had allowed himself to outgrow the version of himself he was told to be. Most men do not fail because they aimed too high. They fail because they sacrificed their potential on the altar of good enough. A man's true tragedy is not being defeated. It is never stepping into the arena. And yet, Even stagnation is not the darkest place a man can find himself. There is a fifth place, colder, sharper, more corrosive, where a man's own mind becomes hostile territory, a place where doubt, comparison, and internal betrayal wage war against him from the shadows, a place where the enemy is not comfort or chaos, but a quieter force that rewires his identity from the inside. And that is where we go next. There is a fifth place where a man's power corrodes from within, and it is the most treacherous so far because it disguises itself as logic, as self-awareness, as humility. It is the place where a man's own mind becomes hostile territory, a psychological landscape filled with doubt, comparison, and quiet self-betrayals that wear the mask of rational thinking. This is the place where a man begins to question his worth, his direction, his capabilities, not because he lacks evidence of strength, but because he has trained his mind to believe the worst about himself. He second-guesses his decisions, he sees others as superior, he discredits his own victories, he inflates his failures, and slowly the mind that was meant to be his palace becomes a labyrinth built by insecurity. Most men don't realize when they enter this place. It begins innocently, a moment of hesitation, a single comparison, a fleeting doubt about whether he is good enough. But the mind is not passive, it builds around whatever seeds are planted. One doubt becomes many. One comparison becomes a lifelong habit. One feeling of inadequacy becomes the lens through which he views every opportunity. A man who doubts himself becomes his own saboteur. He delays when he should act. He hides when he should advance. He talks himself out of the very steps that would free him. And then he calls himself unlucky, not realizing that he is collapsing under the weight of patterns he refuses to confront. What makes this place especially dangerous is that it feels private. A man believes his doubts affect only him, that his internal battles remain hidden from the world. But doubt leaks through a man's posture, his tone, his decisions. It shows in the opportunities he doesn't take, the boundaries he doesn't set, the disrespect he tolerates. It shows in the way he lowers his voice when speaking his desires, or softens his presence to avoid being seen as intimidating. The world senses this uncertainty. People feel it before he even speaks. And once others sense a man's self-doubt, they instinctively know how to treat him, with less respect, fewer opportunities, more control. Doubt is not an internal problem, it becomes a public vulnerability. Comparison makes this place even more poisonous. A man looks at others and magnifies their strengths while minimizing his own. He convinces himself he is behind, unprepared, unworthy. He forgets that every person he admires began with less than he imagines, and struggled more than he will ever know. But comparison blinds him to this truth. It distorts reality until other people's success feels like a verdict against him. And once a man believes he is inferior, he stops taking risks that could prove otherwise. He becomes the architect of his own mediocrity, not because he lacks power, but because he refuses to believe in the power he already has. Internal betrayal is the final wound inflicted in this place. A man breaks promises to himself. He abandons goals he once cared about. He chooses comfort even when he knows it weakens him. He rationalizes his laziness, excuses his inconsistency, minimizes the importance of his own word. And when a man cannot trust himself, he loses the foundation upon which all power is built. Discipline collapses, confidence decays, identity fractures. A man who betrays his own intentions becomes divided. One part of him wants to rise, the other part quietly drags him back down. This internal split is not visible, but its consequences shape everything he touches. And the most tragic part, a man trapped in this mental prison often believes he is being realistic. He calls it being cautious, humble, prudent. He does not realize that realism is often just fear in a more respectable costume. He does not realize that doubt is not accuracy, it is a habit. And like any habit, it strengthens with repetition. A man who spends years doubting himself eventually forgets what it felt like to move boldly, to speak with conviction, to stand without bending. His mind becomes a battlefield where every step forward is met with resistance from the ghosts of his own insecurity. But even this corrosive landscape is not the deadliest place a man can be. There is a sixth place, deeper, darker, and far more enslaving, where a man willingly surrenders his autonomy to something outside himself. A place where he becomes dependent, compliant, and controlled, not by others, but by a force he believes he cannot live without. A place where power is not stolen, but traded away. And that is where we go next. There is a sixth place where a man's power does not merely weaken, it is handed over, piece by piece through dependence. Not dependence on a person necessarily, but dependence on anything outside himself that he believes he cannot function without. This place is sinister because it does not feel like weakness. It feels like relief. It feels like escape. It feels like the one thing that finally makes life bearable. But the moment a man needs something to feel strong, he is no longer strong. The moment he needs something to make decisions, he is no longer sovereign. And the moment he believes he cannot live without a particular comfort, habit, routine, or influence, he has already surrendered more of his autonomy than any enemy could ever steal from him. This place is not defined by the object of dependency, but by the belief that without it, the man himself collapses. Dependence takes many forms. For one man, it is a person whose approval he desperately needs. For another, it is a relationship that he clings to even though it weakens him. For some, it is substances that calm the anxieties they refuse to confront. For others, it is routine comforts, food, pleasure, entertainment that sedate them into compliance. And for many men, it is the illusion of stability that keeps them frozen in lives they have outgrown. Whatever the form, the pattern is the same. A man ties his emotional stability to something external, and that tie becomes a leash. He thinks he is choosing comfort, but comfort is choosing him. He thinks he is managing stress, but stress is managing him. He thinks he is coping, but he is actually conditioning himself to live without inner strength. What makes this place particularly deadly is how gently it enslaves a man. It doesn't demand anything from him, it simply offers ease. It whispers, don't face that pain, numb it, don't confront that truth, escape it, don't evolve, maintain. And the man obeys because dependency always offers a simple trade, short-term relief in exchange for long-term erosion. Dependency never shouts, it soothes. It never pushes, it pulls softly. A man doesn't wake up one day powerless, he drifts into it. He slowly begins to feel uncomfortable without the thing he relies on. His mind justifies it, his emotions defend it, his identity absorbs it, and before he knows it, his will has been outsourced. Even worse, dependency changes how a man sees himself. When he relies on something external to function, his confidence becomes conditional. He tells himself he can only perform under certain circumstances. He convinces himself he needs the right mood, the right environment, the right stimulation. His strength becomes situational instead of internal. His belief in himself becomes fragile because it depends on variables he cannot fully control. And once a man believes he needs something outside himself to be effective, his enemies, and even the world itself, no longer need to overpower him. They only need to remove or disrupt the thing he depends on. Dependency also kills ambition. A dependent man avoids discomfort because discomfort threatens the fragile arrangement he has built with his coping mechanisms. He avoids risk because risk introduces instability. He avoids growth because growth requires detachment from the very behaviors that keep him numb. And so he stays in a psychological loop where he feels stuck, frustrated, and resentful, yet unable to break free. His dreams fade not because he lacks talent, but because his dependency steals the courage required to chase them. A dependent man becomes obedient to necessity instead of possibility. But the cruelest part of this place is how dependency rewrites a man's identity. He begins to see himself through the lens of his coping habits. He calls himself someone who can't handle pressure, someone who needs this to function, someone who would fall apart without it. These beliefs form a prison more restrictive than any external limitation. A man who doubts his inner capacity becomes easy to control, easy to manipulate, easy to derail. His world shrinks. His choices narrow. His destiny becomes shaped not by his will, but by his dependency. Yet dependency does not always look chaotic. Sometimes it looks loyal. Sometimes it looks stable. Sometimes it looks romantic. Sometimes it looks responsible. A man may think he is committed, devoted, disciplined, when in reality he is simply afraid to stand without the crutch he has relied on. And the world will never tell him the truth, because a dependent man is convenient. He is predictable. He is manageable. He is easier to influence than a man who is internally fortified. Even so, there is a place darker than this. a seventh and final place where a man's power is not surrendered, not sedated, not eroded, but fundamentally rewritten. A place where he forgets who he is, what he stands for, and what he was capable of before the world shaped him. A place where the destruction is quiet, total, and deeply personal. And that is where we go next. There is a seventh place where a man's power is not weakened, not distracted, not eroded, but erased. A place so quiet, so familiar, so deeply woven into a man's identity that he rarely notices he has entered it. This is the place where a man forgets who he is. Not in a dramatic moment of crisis, but slowly, quietly, through years of becoming what others needed, expected, or demanded him to be. This place is the graveyard of identity, where a man trades his authentic self for a version shaped by obligation, fear, or social pressure. It is the place where a man becomes a stranger to himself, living a life that no longer belongs to him, guided by beliefs he never chose, and fulfilling roles he never examined. A man can survive distraction, stagnation, insecurity, even dependency, but once he loses himself, he has nothing left to anchor his power to. This place usually begins with subtle self-abandonments. He suppresses parts of himself to keep the peace. He hides his convictions to avoid conflict. He reshapes his personality to become acceptable, likable, predictable, and each time he silences his own voice, that silence becomes easier. Eventually, he stops expressing who he is altogether. His identity becomes a patchwork of external expectations, a mask he wears so consistently that it becomes indistinguishable from his own skin. He stops asking what he wants, because wanting feels dangerous. He stops asserting what he believes, because belief feels confrontational. He stops dreaming for himself, because dreaming reminds him of the distance between the life he has and the life he was meant to live. And so he becomes a character in someone else's story, instead of the author of his own. This place becomes lethal when a man begins performing instead of living. He performs the role of the reliable one, the strong one, the calm one, the responsible one, the agreeable one. He becomes defined by what he provides, rather than who he is. And because he is praised for the role, the reliability, the stability, the predictability, he mistakes the performance for identity. But roles exhaust men, identity fuels them. And when a man spends years living through a role that does not align with his nature, he burns out from the inside. He loses the vitality, intensity, and clarity that once made him formidable. A man who forgets who he is becomes a shadow, efficient, functional, but empty. The most tragic part of this place is how deeply it disconnects a man from his instincts. He stops trusting his intuition. He stops respecting his judgments. He stops listening to the internal signals that once guided him. If something feels wrong, he ignores it. If something feels right, he doubts it. If something calls him forward, he dismisses it. When a man no longer listens to himself, he becomes controllable, not because others overpower him, but because he has abandoned the only compass that cannot be corrupted, his inner truth. A man can rebuild wealth, strength, discipline, but rebuilding a lost identity requires confronting every lie he has lived beneath. This place is also built from compromise. The compromises that seem harmless in the moment, but accumulate into a quiet collapse. He stays where he doesn't belong, because leaving feels disruptive. He tolerates what burdens him because rejecting it feels selfish. He accepts treatment beneath his worth, because demanding more feels uncomfortable. Each compromise cuts a thread from the fabric of his identity, and over time, he cannot remember the texture of who he once was. A man who compromises too much eventually forgets what he deserves. And when he forgets what he deserves, he forgets how to command power. This final place destroys a man not by breaking him, but by convincing him that the brokenness is normal, that the dullness he feels is maturity, that the silence of his instincts is wisdom, that the absence of desire is peace. But numbness is not peace, compliance is not stability, self-abandonment is not virtue. A life lived with no self at the center is not a life, it is a long, slow surrender, and the world benefits greatly from men who have surrendered themselves. They never rebel, they never rise, they never disrupt the systems built to keep them small. Yet here lies the Machiavellian truth. Identity can be reclaimed, not through inspiration, but through confrontation. A man must face the parts of his life that no longer reflect him. He must strip away the roles he performs. He must silence the voices that taught him to shrink. He must rediscover the instincts he buried. He must ask himself, without fear or hesitation, if I were not influenced by expectations, who would I become? It is in that question that a man's power resurrects, because identity is the throne from which all strength originates. And once a man returns to that throne, he becomes untouchable. And so we end where true power begins. Not with others, not with environments, not with circumstances, but with the man himself. Because the final, most dangerous place is the one that steals the memory of who you were meant to be. And the moment you reclaim that memory, every place that once destroyed your power loses its grip forever. If you've made it this far, it's because a part of you already knows this truth. Power is not lost in battle. It's lost in places you shouldn't have entered. The wrong room, the wrong crowd, the wrong silence. Every environment either strengthens you or strips you. Now tell me in the comments, are you ready to walk away from the places that weaken you? Are you willing to choose solitude over corruption? If this message touched you, if it made sense, write in the comments, I protect my power. Let's see how many here are truly ready to walk away from everything that drains them. And don't forget, keep watching the next video. It's important, much more than you imagine. See you there.